You're not listening.
Oh, yes, I was.
Moving forward with the Dekker team. Moving forward together with the Dekker team.
We are honored to have created for you free access to over 603 Life's Inside Track episodes where we share insider tips, making house home, how to get the most out of your space, and really living the best life possible. We're going to explore lessons learned this past year and a different way as we function or focus on a different way of listening, we actually get a different relationship.
Absolutely. And, sometimes it can be a little unnerving to do authentic shows like what we've learned because we share, you say we share insider tips, easy for you to say, and a bunch of other things in your intro. And we also share what's going on in our life. Like we're pretty raw and real.
Real and raw.
Yeah.
And so we're exposing the lessons learned because really the hope is that as we've learned lessons and continue to learn lessons, we realized when we wrote out this month's worth of episodes that we had enough content to do us for the next 10 years. Like there's so many lessons
But don't
learned.
worry, we're not
going to do a whole year or a whole 10 years of it, I promise. And yet we learn them. And then we're hoping that as we share them and as we open up a little bit, you're going to get something out of it. And you can pull the learning toward yourself. So who I'm being.
Yeah, they might relate.
Yeah, you might relate. And if you don't, sorry to drag you into the mud. And so at the beginning.
We never drag them into the mud because we're already back up on dry land. We
True.
spend an hour or two in the mud processing these different things. And then we're up in dry land. We've showered off. We're cleaned. We got our good clothes on. Now we can come back and share the learning.
Right. So the point of you're not listening is we were talking about what are the different ways of listening. And we can listen to hear the other person.
Yeah.
We can listen to learn from the other person.
We can listen to problem solve.
Right. We weren't going to go down that path today because that probably won't go well.
We can listen to, add to.
Right.
Right. Or we can listen for the pause so that we can say what we wanted to say in the first place.
Right.
Not great ways of listening.
Well, they all have their place. Right. They all have their place because sometimes all we really want is to be heard. Oftentimes,
what's that mean, though? What's this? That's the
this
issue.
Is where this whole thing started.
Yeah, therein lies the rub. Is what does it mean to listen to hear, to be heard? Right. That definition. My definition of I listened and I heard are different than your definition of whether I heard you.
Absolutely. So why don't you share your definition? Because I don't dare go down that path because I get tripped up on that.
Well, this is when the fight broke out, Your Honor. It was basically Yetta would say something, and it was a pattern, right? It was a pattern of my behavior. That's what I said. I looked in the mirror, the problem's looking back at me. And you would say something, whatever it was, and then many times I would either problem solve it or I would add on to it. So if you came up with an idea, I go, yeah, and we could do this and this. And then you say, you're not listening. And I would say, well, I did listen, or else I wouldn't be able to add on to what you said.
Right. And so what we eventually realized is what I was actually looking for was for my idea to be acknowledged and appreciated.
Which meant that you were valued.
Right. Right. And so when we finally got here, and it took us only 43 years that we've been processing this. And when Ken says argue, it's more like a heated fellowship moment where there's heightened energy, kind of like there was at the beginning of this segment, where we got a little intense with each other. The tone shifts, the pace shifts, the facial expressions, the body language, all of that gets thrown into the mix, right?
And but also the first 10 seconds of this segment is we were acting.
We were.
And yet it's very easy to act because it's so close. That tonal, that behavior is very well rehearsed.
Well rehearsed.
Yeah.
And so what we're really attempting to say is, as we're listening to each other, whether it's a client, and I know I wouldn't have the tone with a client, and generally speaking, clients don't have a tone with me, but every so often it shows up, right? So as we're listening, can we listen to appreciate what the other person is experiencing and what they're saying versus just hearing the words?
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
So if you're thinking, hey, it would be kind of fun to continue this dialogue with you guys, then you're going to want to send us an email at together@dekkerteam.com, because there are opportunities, even as we release our book in the coming months. It's going to say weeks, but it will be a few months. We're going to do a pre-launch book club. If you think you want to be part of the book launch team, that's an opportunity, or just the regular book club once we actually launch the book, right?
Yeah.
Because there's different purposes for both of those groups. And just like when we're speaking and when we're listening, there's different purposes,
Right.
is the point. So you want to send us an email together@dekkerteam.com so that we don't miss that.
Yeah, and there's two sides of this coin. Let me just say that. Especially when Yetta speaks to me and she's sharing deep feelings, or she's speaking about creativity or whatever it is, first of all, I need to appreciate it. And that may be some repeating it back, letting her know that I actually heard the words she said. And many times it's appreciating the emotion behind the words, the feeling she's feeling, as opposed to just the transactional words that are coming out. And so that's the two sides of the coin. There's the information, and then there's the emotion or feelings behind it. And if I can tap into those before I respond with my solution or my add-on to it or anything else I want to say, what's that do for you? I saw your whole energy change when I said those things.
Yeah, well, because it now makes me feel I'm important, I'm valued, I'm heard, I'm seen. I actually feel like I'm part of something rather than out here by myself. It's like we're in this together rather than me in this alone. And it made me think about our clients. And I'm thinking specifically around feedback right now. And feedback is, the feedback from the perspective of a realtor is very much that it doesn't bring a ton of value to the conversation generally from the other buyer or even the other agent, because they're looking at it from their vantage point. They're not actually in it to give you feedback that supports you, the seller, in moving forward to make better decisions around what to do or what not to do, right? So in the past, I would say, yeah, I understand feedback. You don't really get it half the time. And when you get it, it doesn't make sense. And sorry about that. Sort of like hearing what they were saying, but not appreciating what was actually up for them. So now I will much more sit back and realize what they're actually saying to me is, I put a lot of work into getting the house ready for showings. So when I get feedback that either I don't get it, or I get feedback that is obvious from the actual listing and from what you put out into the marketplace already, it's arduous to get it ready. And so now when I can appreciate the angst that they've gone through, the effort that they've gone through, which you have as a seller, it totally shifts their experience of my listing, because it's a different listing.
Right. So there's this quote. It's called, "Wisdom is the reward you get for a lifetime of listening." We're glad that you joined us, because together we're clarifying your options, because when your options are clear, your wisdom will flow.
Moving forward with the Dekker team. Moving forward.